Hey, what's up, VC? It's Steve again, Harmless Rebel. Time for another country music update. I haven't done one of these in quite a while, and I got quite a bit to show. Some of it's stuff I just pulled out to spin. Some of it's new. I say new. Some of it I've had for a year and a half, and I'm just getting around to. But I usually, when I first get going in the morning, that first hour or two, I'm not really in the metal mood or the hard rock mood. So I usually start the day off with a little bit of country. And some days I just end up spending the day listening to country. But it's just some of the stuff I've spun over the last, the last few weeks, I guess. First up, kind of an upgrade copy. I would like to get a nicer copy. This is one that looked better when I bought it, but I got it for cheap. But this is 190 proof from good old Merle Haggard. I'm trying to think what the... Oh, I can't remember what the hit off of here. There were a couple of really big songs off of here. It doesn't matter. It's Merle Haggard. This is 1979. Kind of the right towards the end of his best material. He had some good stuff in the 80s too. But you know, like a lot of the Outlaws, that 68 to about 80, 82. Even that might be a stretch. About 80 is where they were kind of the best. This one I've shown before. I just got in kind of a mood and pulled this one out. I love this album. Steve Earle. Is it Train A-Comin'? Train A-Comin'. And Ben McCullough is one of my favorite Steve Earle songs. So, you know, I've told this story before. I was really late to Steve Earle. Billy talked him up quite a bit. He's one of his favorite artists. And I ended up getting Exit Zero, and I kind of liked it. But the album that really got me into Steve Earle and really got me buying the rest of his albums was this one. I picked this up for like $10 a couple years ago, and I've been hooked ever since. And I've just been buying his stuff left and right. This whole album is really good, with the exception of Rivers of Babylon. He does a good cover of Rivers of Babylon. It just does. There's so many covers out there. So many people have done this. He also does a really killer cover of Tecumseh Valley, which is I can't think of his name. It's gonna drive me nuts. I can't think of the guy's name. One of the more famous songwriters, Townes Van Zandt. It's a Townes Van Zandt song. So it's funny. I'm not a fan of Townes Van Zandt. I love his music and his writing. For some reason, I just don't like when he does it. I'm not saying he doesn't have songs. I've got a couple of his albums, and there's some songs I like. But as a whole, I'm just not a big fan of his voice and his style. Whereas when other people do his music, I absolutely love it. And this is a case of that. The cover of Tecumseh Valley here is really killer. Amazing album, though. Next up, really, really good album. I can't believe this was not released. I think it was 84. Yeah, this is all recorded 81 to 84. Well, there's one song from 81. And the rest were recorded in 84, and it was supposed to be released in 84. And I don't remember what the reason was. But what makes this such a killer album? This was just released a couple years ago. This was released in 2014. But this was shortly after he died. Out Among the Stars. It was an album that was supposed to be released in 84, and for whatever reason, it wasn't. And what makes this really special is his early 80s were really rough for me. He had some great songs, but the label was pushing him towards to go electric, so he had a lot of electric musicians. There was some synth in there, and it just killed the songs. Had he done those songs from 80 to 84 or 80 to 83, that time frame, had he done them in his traditional style, there would have been a bunch of hits on those albums. But because he didn't, there weren't. And I'm wondering if because these are traditional songs, the label didn't want to release them. I don't know. But this album is phenomenal. Every song on here kills. If you didn't pick up a copy of this one, I highly recommend grabbing it. I'm still looking for the single. I don't remember what magazine it was. One of the magazines, though, released a 7-inch as a lead up to this album that I really want to get a copy of. Speaking of Johnny Cash, let's see. I got a few Johnny Cash in here. This is the Unbroken Circle, the musical heritage of the Carter family. This was the last project that Johnny Cash worked on. He worked on it with John Carter, who's his son, and or John Carter Cash. This was actually this soundtrack was for a documentary that came out about the Carter family. That's really good. I highly recommend checking it out. It's on Netflix. It's called The Winding Stream, I believe. Just a really killer soundtrack and tribute to the Carter family. But you got George Jones, Sheryl Crow, Emmylou Harris, John Prine, Willie Nelson. Who else? Earl and Randy Scruggs, Ricky Skaggs, Johnny Cash, obviously. Engine 143. This was his last recording before he died. Marty Stewart. Who else is on here? Rosanne Cash, June Carter Cash. One of her final recordings too. And then Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. Really good though. A lot of the early Carter this is the Carter early Carter family, and definitely worth having. Next up, Greatest Hits Volume 2. This is an early hits collection. This was 71, I believe, when this came out. I'm not seeing it. But, I mean, it's got a bunch of his hits. The good thing about this is because this is 71, it's a lot of there's a lot of songs that are considered deeper tracks now. One of my favorites on here is his version of If I Were a Carpenter with June Carter. I've always loved their version of that song, but I found this sealed for like $5 at a not a thrift store, but a antique mall. So really happy to add that one to the Johnny Cash collection. Next up, a little bit of Katie Lang. I'm hit or miss with hers. There's a couple of her albums that I absolutely love and that absolutely blow me away, and there's some that's just okay. I believe, I could be wrong on this, but I believe this was her first solo album. Before this, she was doing Katie Lang and the Reclines. What was that last one? Absolute Torch and Twang is one of her best albums. It's absolutely phenomenal. I believe that one came out right before this one. Regardless, Shadowland is a killer album. Absolute Torch and Twang and Shadowland, I think, are her best albums by far. Just great stuff. Next up, I love this album. Really disappointed with this pressing though. This is a real limited pressing. These things are going for $50-$60, and it sounds like shit. It's just a really bad pressing. It's a really noisy. So me and Billy got in a couple discussions about this particular artist because he loved his last album, was really disappointed with this one. I never heard his last album, so I love this. And now I'm really looking forward to his last album. But this is Songs of the Plains, Colter Wall, and it's just what it sounds like. Songs of the Plains. It's real traditional folk country, Western folk country. Really good stuff. But this is a Vinyl Me Please exclusive. This was not part of the record club. This is one that you could order from them. And I believe it's on gold. And that's what really surprises me, because the Vinyl Me Please stuff is usually really nice. And this one just, it looks nice. The packaging is beautiful. It's just a really noisy pressing and doesn't sound good at all. But it is, if you're into that traditional early Western style of country music, you're going to love this. It's really good. Next up, a little bit more Steve Earle, and there'll be more Steve Earle and Johnny Cash as I'm flipping through here. But next up, we got So You Want to Be an Outlaw. This is his last album. He's got one that just came out within the last couple weeks that I haven't listened to, but this is the one from 2017. I love this album. I didn't see a lot of people talking about this one, but this is and he's had a couple that were hit or miss over the last 15 years or so. But This album is great. Love the album, love the artwork. So You Want to Be an Outlaw, I'm Looking for a Woman, killer songs. Just as a whole, another one, highly, highly recommend. Next up, another one that I recommend. This one actually won a bunch of awards. Was this last year? Yeah, 2018. This is Willie Nelson doing Frank Sinatra, and he kills it. This album is so good. And apparently they were really good friends. I didn't know that until I was kind of reading up on this. But they were really good friends for decades. And he's got a lot of respect for him, obviously. But Fly Me to the Moon, Summer Wind, One for My Baby, A Foggy Day. It was a very good year. Blue Moon, it was a very good year. It's amazing. Blue Moon, I'll Be Around Night and Day. What's this thing called? Love with Nora Jones. Beautiful. Young at Heart, and of course, My Way. This one is, where's this one from? I think this one's a Barnes & Noble exclusive. I can't remember. I think it's on dark blue. Oh no, it's on this really cool. I don't know if you can even see it. It's like a blue and black. Sounds phenomenal. I've had really good luck with the Barnes & Noble exclusives, and they always do some really cool colors. And the colored cop versions are always really limited and end up usually being pretty valuable. This one, again, is going for like $35, $40. And also from Willie Nelson, this is his debut album. This was recently repressed, maybe 2 years ago, 2017. Really nice repress. I've been looking for an original copy, and I've never seen one. It's been on my want list for a long time, and I finally ran across this one, this repress, and I love it. But I mean, full of hits. The biggest one on here being the original version of Crazy. I love the Patsy Cline version is one of the all-time great country songs, but his version is right there. He wrote it. That's what I love, especially about these early Willie Nelson songs, because his later albums is a mix of him and Waylon and Merle, and they're all sharing songs. And this is all written by him, except for one song, I believe. I believe Darkness on the Face of the Earth is the only one that's not written by him. Killer album, though. I think that one's on purple vinyl. Next up, this is another one of the Barnes & Noble exclusives. A mono repress from Sundays. This one is on white vinyl, I believe. But this is All Aboard the Blue Train with Johnny Cash. So what Sun was doing, I think this was mid-70s when this came out originally. No, I'm sorry, mid-60s, so it was 63. So Johnny Cash had already left Sun Recordings, and what they were doing is they would put out some unreleased material. Every 2 or 3 albums he did with, I think it was Capitol that he was on, Sun would pull out some old material. Well, what this one was it's all songs that have something to do with trains. So you got Blue Train, and actually Blue Train, I believe, was the only new song on here that had never been released before. Everything else, Hey Porter, Train of Love, Rock Island Express, or Rock Island Line, Hey Porter, Folsom Prison Blues, The Wreck of Old 97, all killer songs. But it was just Sun Records trying to cash in since Johnny had left their label. Speaking of one of those, this is another one of those. However, this one was all new material except for Cry, Cry, Cry. This was released 2 or 3 albums into his Capitol run. I think it says it on here, actually. But regardless, this one's done by Vinyl Lovers. This one was actually a hit album for him, even though he was no longer on the label. Sugar Time, what was the other big hit? And Hey Porter, this was the first appearance of those tracks. The entire album's amazing, though. Just one of the classic Sun releases. Next up, we got a little bit of DAC. This is an upgrade and it's also a white label promo. I've had really good luck. I think I've got 4 or 5 of the David Allan Coe white label promos now. But this one's Spectrum 7. Just a killer album. 78, I believe. 79.
13 years this spring.
Next up, Eric Church, Carolina. I was really surprised to find this one. Found this for really cheap. I think 10 or 11 bucks I paid for this. And this is an original pressing. This did just get a repress. The original pressings are going for decent money these days. So I haven't heard what the repress quality is, but it's definitely one you should have in your collection. His first few albums are his best, I think. What's the other one? I just ordered. I was just listening to it the other day. I can't see it now. Something is it Saints and Sinners or something like that? Sinners and Saints. I just ordered the repress of that on vinyl, and that kind of made me want to pull this out and give it a spin. Next up, this one was a pretty big disappointment. I was super stoked for this. As soon as I saw it was up for pre-order, I pre-ordered it. I called Billy and like 2 other people and told them, hey, make sure you pre-order this. They did a couple of limited pressings. But this is Hard Times and White Lines from Whitey Morgan in the 78s. Really cool artwork. I dig everything about the packaging. And then we've got, it's on, I think they called this Tiger's Eye or Tiger something. Really cool album cover, or really cool vinyl. It had to have been done by Quality, though. Let me see if it says. Yeah, I can't see where it was done. It sounds like shit. It's a really bad pressing. It sounds really muted. It sounds like you're playing an 80s picture disc. That's how bad it sounds. And not just that, it's by far his worst release. I've given it a few spins. I just can't get into it. Honestly, it just bores me. There's some good songs on here that should have been really good. Most of it's written by him, which is normally the case. He also does Just Got Paid, which is a ZZ Top track. Carrying On is Del Watson. But, I don't know. It just sounds like somebody trying to copy Waylon Jennings. And the songs aren't as good. And they're all about the same tempo. It just doesn't do it for me. I'm really disappointed by this one. And the fact that it's a really bad pressing just makes it that much worse. So unfortunately, that's the only Whitey Morgan album I haven't absolutely loved, and the only one of his albums I wouldn't recommend. Next up, this is probably my all-time favorite country music album. It's also the best album from this artist, and it's not actually one of his albums. It's a movie soundtrack. As soon as it's funny, Billy Hurst and I had talked for a couple of years about this album particularly. It's my favorite country album. It's one of his, and the fact that it was never available on vinyl was just disappointing. And they announced it was coming out, and we both went crazy and ordered it. And then unfortunately, I got my copy in, and it was scratched. And it sat there for like a month and a half before I got around to listening to it or opening it. So I didn't even know it was scratched. And by the time I noticed it, it was too late to return it to Amazon. So ended up reordering it. It sounds amazing. This is the soundtrack for Pure Country. If you haven't heard this album or seen the movie is absolutely amazing. But this is, and George Strait is my favorite country music artist of all time. And this is his best album. He's got some songs out there that are better than any of the songs on here, but as a whole, every single song on this album is a masterpiece. This is a greatest hits album by itself. Every song on here was a hit, and I absolutely love it. Highly recommend picking this one up if you can still get it. Just a few more left. Where are we at? Nah, it's going to be a long one, sorry. Another original Steve Earle pressing. I was really shocked to run across this. I paid $11 for this, and it's in mint condition. I never see this for a good price. Even the represses are pretty pricey. Original pressing of Copperhead Road, though. Phenomenal. It's funny. So I showed this album on CD a while back, and talked about how I didn't like it that much. It has grown on me. I do like the song Copperhead Road and The Devil's Right Hand. They've just been played so much over the years that I could skip right past them. Back to the Wall, though, is an amazing song. Even When I'm Blue, You Belong to Me, Nothing But a Child. All the deep tracks on here are amazing. Again, one I highly recommend. This is probably a good starting point if you're looking to get into Steve Earle. Or Train A Comin'. Train A Comin's the one that really did it for me. And this one is one, too, that I had always seen the CD over the years. And always looked at it because, it's a cool looking album cover. And so I'm glad to finally have this one on vinyl. Next up, this one was a gift from Billy Hurst. And I've been playing this a lot since he bought it, or since he sent it to me. So I went ahead and pulled it out again. But you know what? Maybe Melinda's fault that I pulled this one out. I don't remember if she showed this one or his other one. I Wonder Do You Think of Me, though, is just one of the all-time great country music albums. And Keith Whitley is one of the best ever. He was one of the neo-traditionalists. He was right in the vein of George Strait, Randy Travis. They were kind of... Actually, I say they're contemporaries. He really looked up to George Strait. He talked about it quite a bit. This one was released in '89. This was a posthumous release. I believe it was about 4 months after he died when this one was released. And that was a really huge loss to the country music community as a whole. But Talk to Me, Texas, Between an Old Memory and Me is one of the all-time great country music songs. Tennessee Courage, Heartbreak Highway, not a bad song on this album. It's just phenomenal. And thanks again, Billy Hurst. Next up, another Merle Haggard. This is Okie from Muskogee. This is a really cool album. This is another one. It looked like it was in really good condition. It doesn't sound good. I'm going to have to get another pressing of it. This was in the shrink, too, and it looked mint, but when you played it, it just sounds really rough. But regardless, definitely one worth having in your collection if you're a Merle fan. This is him actually playing live in Muskogee, Oklahoma. Between the amazing music, the talk in between the songs, it's got all of his hits. Just a phenomenal live album. Another one, I am so glad they repressed this. I have been trying to find this since 2012 when this was released. The original pressings sold out, and they never go up for sale. The people that love this album, this artist, love him. I've only seen one album show up for sale once, and it was signed, and they wanted $400 for it. This is Nick 13. It's his debut album. This was my favorite album of any genre of the year it came out. I played this non-stop, the CD version of it. So if you're not familiar with Nick 13 is the lead singer of the psychobilly band Tiger Army. He was really influenced by traditional country music, and that's what this is. This is traditional Western country music. I have not seen a bad review of this. The only negative thing that I have seen is people talking about his California accent when he sings. However, there's a huge tradition of country music coming from California and the Old West. So it definitely has that Western feel to it. It's got an early rockabilly feel mixed with traditional country. It's a beautiful album. It's one that I highly recommend. And if I would listen to some videos, and if you like it, order it while you still can. Again, the original pressing sold out super fast, and this repress has been pretty limited too. 2 more records left. Next up, I was really happy to find this. This is their second to last album. I love these guys, these gals. And I'm really glad they finally repressed these because originals were crazy expensive. But this is Home from the Dixie Chicks. I'm not going to pull it out. It's just black vinyl. Nothing special there. But you got Long Time Gone, Landslide. What else was on? Traveling Soldier. Those are probably the 3 biggest hits off of here. But the entire album is absolutely phenomenal. It sounds beautiful. They did a great job with the repress. And you just can't go wrong with the Dixie Chicks. And then last but not least, this is who we're listening to right now. We're not listening to this album. We're actually listening to his album 30, which was released in 2012 on his own label, or self-release, I should say. This is the Adobe Sessions, and there is not a bad song on here. Cody Jinks is an absolutely phenomenal singer out of Texas. He's definitely got that Texas honky-tonk feel, which I absolutely love. Highly recommend getting any of his albums. They're finally released. All but I believe 2 have been released to vinyl now. This is one of them, and his debut, which you can't find in any format for under $100. So Cody Jinks was a heavy metal singer, and he just kind of went back to his roots and started doing this style of music right here. And I love everything about him. Again, highly recommend this. All of his records too, he does these, they're all 3-sided, and he does an etching on every one of them. This etching, yeah. What's this one? Yeah, this one's pretty cool. I don't know if you can see it. You guys see it? The skull with the beard, or with the goatee. They've all got really cool etchings like that, though. And they all sound really good because he does high quality pressings, and then he does them 3-sided to give it that little extra space for sound quality. Really good stuff though, and not too expensive. You can get all of his stuff on Amazon, all of his LPs for pretty good prices. I hope he releases this on vinyl. 30 may be my favorite album of his, the one we're listening to in the background right now. This lived in my car for about 3 months after I bought it. I literally did not play another CD in my car. Just phenomenal. You can only buy it through his website, though, as of right now. Like I said, hopefully that changes soon. But that's it, guys. I hope you're all well. I'll do another video soon. Take care. Bye.